Welcome to the CTA Foundation CES interview series. My name is Steve Ewell, and I'm Executive Director of the Consumer Technology Association Foundation, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Kate Sonka, the Executive Director of Teach Access and the Assistant Director of Inclusion and Academic Technology at Michigan State. Welcome, Kate. Great to have you here.
Hey, Steve, it's so great to see you today. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I really loved having you at CES last year, and I'm glad that we're able to bring you back in the all-digital CES for 2021 and continue the conversation about the great work that you and Teach Access are doing. Can you share a little bit about what Teach Access is and the work that you're doing through Teach Access?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So Teach Access is a collaboration between academia, so universities, colleges, tech industry, and disability advocacy groups. And we're all working together to infuse accessibility into the higher ed curriculum. So the goal here is that we're introducing basics of accessibility to students, current students, so that as they graduate and are hired by major tech companies, many of whom attend and participate in CES, they are hiring students, recent graduates, who know at least a little bit about accessibility, so that as they're designing and developing products and software, they're including accessibility from the start. What we like to call, or the phrase we like to use, is products are born accessible, meaning right away that's part of the development and design process.
And how do you help those students learn about accessibility? How do you work with the universities and others to create that training?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a variety of projects going on at any one time. In terms of membership, we have about 24 universities and colleges, about a dozen tech companies, and a few disability advocacy groups. And all of those members and participants are working in different task forces focused on different audiences, if you will. And out of that, we have projects like the faculty curriculum development grants. And so Teach Access awards small grants to faculty across the US to aid them or to help them develop curricular material that they can then introduce into courses they already teach. So this might be a faculty member who's teaching an intro to computer science or intro to graphic design, or maybe a higher level, upper level course in any of those topics. And rather than say, please create a whole course from scratch, because we know that that can be challenging to fit into an overall curriculum, what we're asking for is, could you make an assignment that has, focus on accessibility? Or could you introduce a module where you're lecturing or having a discussion around disability and accessibility for, an hour out of the semester? And so these grants are created as a way to help faculty kind of kickstart that process of introducing curriculum around these topics into their courses. So that's one of the ways that we support faculty in doing this work and trying to get them more prepared or have the tools that they need to teach. Another way is that we work directly with students through a program called Study Away Silicon Valley. We founded this program 3-ish years ago. We were able to successfully run it twice. And then of course, this year, the year 2020, those plans got disrupted. So we didn't have a program, but going into 2021, we will be doing a virtual option. But what this program is we bring together a number of students, current students. When it's in person, students are traveling out to Silicon Valley. They spend a week out there. They're visiting a different company each day, sometimes more than one in a day, to learn about the accessibility landscape at these companies. They also get to meet the teams. They get to just be on those campuses to understand kind of, what's the feel, what's the environment like. And throughout that whole week, they're working in small groups on some sort of design challenge around accessibility. Maybe it's something that companies are asking them or that students become really interested in. And so they're working through that means. So a few different things, couple different things that we're doing to introduce students.
Absolutely. Seems like a ton of great things happening. And it seems like a real benefit for those students as they get that, real world experience of meeting with companies, seeing people who are doing it in their daily lives and in their jobs, and see the opportunities that they could potentially have ahead for them in their careers. Can you share some stories or examples of students that have gone on to do great things from the program?
Absolutely. So there have been a couple students who secured internships, summer internships with some of the companies they were able to connect with as part of Study Away. In particular, we've had students have internships at Facebook and Verizon Media. And additionally, we have students who have secured permanent employment at some of these companies as well. So it's really a moment where students are able to start networking, kind of like you said, connecting with these teams. And whether it leads directly to employment or an internship, it is a space where I know students, especially students that I've worked with in the past, have said, "Hey, I have a question about something. Could I reach out to, I met so and so from Google. Could I talk with her and ask her my questions?" And that definitely happens. So it really helps students network and understand what could a career either in accessibility look like specifically, um, or just what does it look like to work in some of these companies, and how does accessibility fit into that? So say they were going to be hired, some of them have gotten jobs as entry level designers or developers at companies like Ford or Target, not necessarily in the accessibility groups, but just general teams. And I've had students still tell me, "Oh my gosh, the Study Away was great because it helped me understand how to talk about some of this and language to use or ways that I could introduce this." And so students have been asked by some of these companies within their first year of employment to share what they know about accessibility or bring that into some of the projects they're working at. So I've seen and we've seen, tangible, these students were hired or had internships come out of these engagements, but also maybe they didn't go to work for a company that's a member of Teach Access, but that they are spreading the word about accessibility. So we see both happening.
Well, and that's something that, yeah, as they go in and bring that knowledge and bring that culture to the companies, it will result in products that will have accessibility taken into consideration, which is what we're all looking for. So I
Exactly.
think it's an amazing way to really spread the word of accessibility, and get it out to more and more companies as they understand the importance of this space. It's obviously very important for the students, but it also benefits the companies and the universities that take part in Teach Access. Can you share a little bit more about how the companies and universities are engaged?
Absolutely. So, yeah, aside from the very tangible, companies are able to connect with students for potential employment or internships. I've also seen it be beneficial for companies to understand what kind of excites or drives students, and how maybe that will impact their own culture or ways that they might consider attracting future talent to their companies. So some of it is companies are able to learn, what's going on with students right now. What are they interested in? How might that shape what they're doing? We also have a group that's been working on the Hiring Toolkit. And so the idea behind this is being created by a group that's part of the company's task force, is that they're looking at how do we, so it's one thing to work with faculty and another to work with students, but how can companies start to change or start to impact their own approaches to accessibility within, internally. And so what this hiring toolkit is doing is looking at what kind of language can you add to job postings. So say it's for a entry level UX designer, for example. What are a few bullet points you could add to that job description about accessibility that would help attract students or applicants, I should say, who have those skills, so that you can start to change the culture on your in your companies. Um, And there's future plans as well to think about. So not only attracting, but also that group is starting to think about what does it mean for retaining. So how do we, attract these individuals to apply, and then what does it mean once they're in these positions? How do we make sure that they're able to continue doing that work? So companies are able to benefit that way. For universities, it helps them plug into this wider network, and that's something about universities that I love, is that we are a very collaborative people. We want to work, we want to share. And so it's been a way for universities who, maybe it's a university who has a long-standing tradition in doing incredible work around accessibility, like a University of Washington, for example. And then there's a university who's maybe newer to it, or a faculty member who's on a smaller campus. Maybe it's a 2-year campus, or community college, where there's different resources available. And so that person is now able to have this larger network, and a larger pool, so to speak, to kind of draw upon, or be able to ask questions. Hey, how would how did this work when you introduced this on your campus? How might this work for mine? So it's collaborative in that way, of universities being able to connect with each other. But then, of course, universities and companies being able to connect with each other also. So, it's a way for universities to see what's driving industry, and industry to see, well, how, what does it mean to try and introduce something in university, and what's the best way that we could perhaps package information to share, or encourage faculty to be teaching, or something to that effect. So everybody, it becomes or it has become, I should say, just a really collaborative environment where everybody's learning from everybody and sharing, no matter what industry or side of the coin you're on, I should say.
Well, and that's really the power of bringing together, people from diverse backgrounds. I'm so impressed with seeing the growth that Teach Access has had as far as bringing in both new companies and new universities from really all over the country, and getting them more and more involved. So yeah, I can see real benefits with having those dialogues coming together. Speaking as a newer organization coming together and growing, and looking at how to build on the work that you're doing, this has obviously been a bit of a challenging year as well. So, as you're looking at, one, how you can continue to build the organization, but also look at how you can continue to serve the members that you currently have, how have you used technology to keep being effective essentially this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, TJAXOS was pretty well positioned to be able to um, handle what was happening this year, in the sense that we started as a distributed organization. There's really no sort of headquarters for Teach Access, because it really is spread across the country in terms of people who are doing this work. And so for the years leading up to 2020, we had already become pretty accustomed to doing virtual meetings like this, being able to work asynchronously through collaborative software, like a Google Doc, for example. So we were pretty well positioned in that way. I think what has been great to see is that there's just been a stronger community built up this year around people really wanting that connection. So things like monthly meetings where we're all on a Zoom call together, for example, everybody's really excited to talk to each other, and be able to have that connection. So I would say for the most part, we've been able to continue working as we always do, which is asynchronously, virtually, and so forth. So it's been, the tech side of it, has really been pretty normal, if I can call it that word, for us this year. But of course, it's the managing everybody else, or managing what everyone else has going on. People have a lot that they've been dealing with. So making sure we were always finding that balance was probably our biggest challenge, of just not trying to ask people to do too much on top of everything else we're all doing. So.
Absolutely. And that's something we've all faced this year. Being here at CES 2021, this is where we see so many emerging technologies, things that are getting ready to come to market. Are there certain types of technologies that you personally are excited to see coming out in the either just emerging now or coming down the road?
Yeah, we have there's an organization that some of our members in Teach Access have helped co-found and are working on called XR Access. And they're really looking at a similar question, but around, virtual reality, augmented reality, on how to make that accessible. And so I'm really curious to see how those technologies are incorporating accessibility into what they're doing, because I do think that that is a space. I mean, I've seen it even on our campus at Michigan State University. We have um, a part of our library that's dedicated to looking at AR and VR. But how are we making that accessible for users? And so I'm really curious to see how any of those companies are addressing that. And then, of course, because I'm in Michigan, automotive industry, I'm always interested in what's happening with autonomous vehicles. And in fact, a former student of mine is, like I said, working at Ford now, and I think that's one of the things that he's also looking at. So always curious to see any sort of progress around those sorts of technologies.
Absolutely. And I have no doubt we're going to see a lot of that at CES this year. Well, if people want to learn a little bit more about Teach Access or, potentially join and get involved with Teach Access, where should they go to get more information?
That's a great question. So information about the organization is at teachaccess.org. If you're interested in, if you have a question or want to be in contact with somebody, you can email us at info, I-N-F-O, at teachaccess.org. And I would really encourage people to check it out. This is, we've just embarked upon a really significant strategic planning process where after we come out of it in a few months, our goal is to really scale up what we're doing. I mean, we're talking about how do we reach 1 million students by 2030, for example, as maybe one of those indicators. So this is a really great time if people are interested in getting involved, because we're at the start of a really important next phase in the organization of how are we going to reach even more students than we currently do. So teachaccess.org or info@teachaccess.org for emails.
Well, I'll say, as a Teach Access member with the CTA Foundation, we're thrilled to be a part of it and looking forward to just continuing to see you do the work that you're doing. So thank you so much, Kate, for joining us here today. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yes, same. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for making the time.
Absolutely. And for the audience, if you're interested in learning more about the CTA Foundation, you can go to ctafoundation.tech. Thank you.